What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Hashira Half Hour. And today we have a special episode for y'all because Bryan finished the manga. As always, I am one of your hosts, Hana, and I am currently dealing with the fact that I cry every time I open up TikTok because someone makes a sad edit. So, fun times.
What's up, y'all? It's Bryan. I'm the Sakuna finger that Yuji dropped on the floor and called 5-second rule for.
All right. If we're doing this today, then what's up, guys? My name is Emily. I am the endless pit of despair that is the Shibuya arc of Jujutsu Kaisen. RIP. To those who know. Those that don't, you're going to find out. So.
Oh no. I don't know.
I don't know either, folks.
I'm scared.
That's not what we're talking about today.
No, today we're talking about the endless despair that is the Demon Slayer manga. So before we get started, just wanted to throw a spoiler warning out there. Obviously, this episode is going to be full of manga spoilers. We are not going to hold back when we talk about the end of the story or what happens to characters. So if you do not know what happens and don't want to know what happens until the anime comes out, please stop listening now, as hard as it is to say that. Please don't listen. But if you're okay with spoilers or you know what's happening, this episode's for you. So we're going to dive into it. And I have one question for you, Bryan. How are you doing?
To be honest, I am not as, with Demon Slayer, I was, hoping for a more happy ending, but I guess it really wasn't that happy, was it? I mean, obviously Tanjiro's scraped by and, everything in, full circle came to fruition, right? He finally got Nezuko back to a human. He got back to a human after he became a demon. What? But everyone else died along the way. The fact that only 2 Hashira stood alive and then our little trio was left standing, God, it's so sad. Talking about all right, so I think first off I want to start with, of course, the villains, the demons, of course. Doma, an A1 villain, A1. Also, that man said gay rights. He had a fan. He was throwing ice flowers at people. I'm sorry, okay. He literally gave me, oh my god, he does. He is young, gay, and mean as a personality. With that being said, I think I've already said it once. I'll say it again. I love sickly sweet villains. I love villains who are in their own little psychotic world, and he fits exactly that. He thinks that people are living on and he's carrying on their legacy so he can preserve them forever inside his body. Wow, what a mindset. And that fight scene too. Poor Shinobu, she was I will be the pawn if you can be the bishop behind me. Are you kidding me? She was if we're gonna take down this demon who killed my sister, I feel like everything in Demon Slayer was dropped, and then you saw why it was dropped there earlier, later in the season to reconnect. There's so much foreshadowing that finally comes through here, and I feel like this scene is just a culmination of why, we've talked about the many reasons of why we enjoy Demon Slayer. I feel like the fight scene of Shinobu, Kanao, and then Doma is the culmination of Demon Slayer, elements coming to form something really beautiful to watch.
Yeah, that whole fight scene was very full circle because you had Shinobu, who, he killed her sister, but we also had Inosuke join that fight, and he killed Inosuke's mom. Yeah. So, a lot of full circle moments in that scene that I think, and this is a pretty popular opinion, but I think the Infinity Castle arc is going to be, without a doubt, probably the arc of our generation. It just takes hits. It gets you emotionally, both on the Slayer side, because we lose quite a few people. Rip Shinobu. Oh, that was hard. Rip Moichiro, Genya, rest in peace to all of them.
Himejima.
Well, he died later with Muzan, but
He moves on from life.
um, just like that, along with we get backstories of all the demons too. Emily, I know you like to talk about your man, your other man.
The other man. Oh, we are gonna, if we're talking about Akaza, what a brutal backstory and very conflicting for me personally traumatized by this because Rengoku is my favorite Hashira, but I do think that Akaza has one of the most compelling backstories of any of the demons that we get to see. So sad. Like everything from like the meaning of the tattoos that we get to see on him initially and like the kind of like the lore and just like the Japanese tradition of that down to like the trauma that occurred in his life that would lead him to make a decision like that because that was I don't know. For him, I'm like I don't know if death would have been the better option at that point. I think he was at like the lowest low of his life and it's like who could blame somebody for hoping if you're able to be provided with some kind of glimmer of hope. What a sad backstory. That one
Yeah.
wrecks me.
Yeah, and
Man.
it kind of goes along with like we go back to Daki and Gyutaro, which obviously like is pre only manga, so like everyone kind of knows about their backstory. And I always like to touch on like the parallels, like Nezuko and Tanjiro and Gyutaro and Daki. And there's not really parallel with Nezuko and Tanjiro and Akaza, but you realize just all of these demons truly became evil because of the way humanity treated them when they were humans. And you really can't blame them. Like the only one that I can really think of that became a demon just to become a demon outside of Muzan was Doma. Doma was just bored.
He is like, fuck around and find out. Why not?
He's like, I just want to do something different. Cool, I'll become a demon. Well, everyone else like has this like heartbreaking, even like Kokushiba, like it's not as heartbreaking as Akaza, but like he like what happened between him and Yorichi was still like really tough. And like again, a sad backstory. And what happened to him? Like, don't blame him for becoming a demon. Akaza, don't blame him for becoming a demon. Gyutaro and Daki, don't blame them for becoming demons because humanity like wronged them. So it really shows how the writing of Demon Slayer is better than people make it out to be.
Yeah.
I think kind of looking at how we got into the Infinity Castle arc, I want to start there too. I want to go into that. First off, Muzan just rolling up on scene, being like, it's me, your boy. Where's Ubiyashiki? Literally out of nowhere. Just, okay, wow. First off, like, we talked about then, because we just filmed the episode the other day, like, Muzan's terrifying. No, that's terrifying. When he just walks in and then all the Hashira they're already too late. Ubiyashiki was like at least grateful though, and I thought that was actually really like revealing for Muzan's character was that he had this like couple minute conversation with him. Ubiyashiki is like, I didn't think this would go this long. I mean, thank you for the couple extra minutes of air, but I wanted to ask some questions, and at least he got his final interview in, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Prediction. I think Muzan showing up is going to be the end of season 3. I feel like the Hashira training arc has to be part of season 3. I feel like the tail end of the Swordsmith Village arc, it matches better than like putting it at the beginning of the Infinity Castle arc. And I feel we have been blessed with like not really having a cliffhanger for the end of a season yet with this show. Like obviously episodes end with cliffhangers, but I feel like season 3, I'm just putting it out into the universe now to see if I'm right, but I feel like it's gonna end like with Muzan showing up at the mansion, and then it's just that's the end of season 3.
Yeah, thinking about how people will respond to that is wild. Um, for those who haven't watched the manga, and it's going to be a big turning point for them. as we get into the actual fights here, right? So everyone's rushing to the castle. They're trying to get to Ubuyashiki. Muzan's like, nah, fam, and kills him. And it's really sad because getting his backstory a little bit and his family curse and his kind of will to try and continue the Demon Slayer Corps and also training his children too. Like his 7 and 8 year old children then becomes the head of the quarterback, or I don't even know what you call it, play callers of the Demon Slayers. They're like, all right, send them this way. You go here, go fight them. Like this kid was clearly raised with the intention of like, hey, like the main purpose in your life, unfortunately, is not to actually live it for yourself, but it is to be ready for this position that you will take on someday. Kind of leaning on some other cultures or other things. It kind of gives me God of War vibes as a video game. Playing that, I actually just started playing it, and it's the same thing. Kratos is trying to prep his son Atreus to go up the mountain and redeem for his mother's death. So it's really interesting to kind of see this position where someone gets handed what they're going for in their life.
I don't want to like distract from where we currently are, but just to kind of like do my stream of consciousness, like where my mind is going now with it
Go
is
for it.
the ending, like the final, I don't remember if it's one chapter or like a handful, but like the time skip, essentially very controversial as to whether or not people liked that. But we're talking about like destiny, we're talking about like the tragedy in this lifetime, and then we get to see like a glimpse of like this is what it could be because of the sacrifices that people made in the past.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I'm okay with it if they add a time skip where we get to see more of our like main trio living life. I just want to see maybe like a 5-10 year skip, just which we get in like there's like a book, it's called Status Update or something, Status Report. It's supposed to be like a year after, and Tundra is just kind of talking about like what's going on. Honestly, I thought it was a good way to end. I feel like it's good to see that the sacrifices that they made have turned into a world where there's no demons except for Yoshiro, who is still just chugging on, making art of Tamayo. Um, I think it's interesting that their great great grandchildren look just like them. I think they were trying to kind of hint at maybe they were not just great great grandchildren, but like the reincarnated versions of them. So I kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that as well. So I liked the ending. I want them to add a little bit because I want to see our characters grow up a little bit more.
The time skip itself, I thought was fine. I think for me personally, it's hard to get attached. I guess like I mean, yeah, it's hard to get attached to characters that have a relation, but that I have no context for. I think with the time skip, it meant a lot because it demonstrated obviously the cause and effect of the work they'd done, and even questioned the veracity of it. I remember one of the kids was like, "Oh, were you still reading Grandpa's books or something like that?" And it definitely kind of brought that historical aspect to it. But me personally, with the time skip, I think it was just an interesting way to demonstrate, kind of what could have been Demon Slayer or like a different type of anime in that world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am conflicted on it. I think that there are some things that are really nice about it, but I do think it kind of leans into what you just said, Bryan, that it's like this is like what it could have been if it was something else, but it's not. Like it's not something else. And so I liked it. I also would have been okay if it had been left out. I think I would have been okay with like just a straight up sad ending. There are some really nice things that we do get out of it though. We get to see and I'm not remembering the new characters' names, but like the Rengoku Tanjiro relationship, we get to see again, which obviously for me was like a favorite part of it. But we also get to see like the Obanai and Mitsuri thing come to fruition, which is so sweet. And a number of other like really sweet relationships that get touched on that otherwise wouldn't have been. So I think I'm okay with it because of that. But I do think, and I really hope that the anime will resolve this for me, that I think it would have been better earned if a couple things had been a little bit more fleshed out in the initial story. I know that like the end prior to that, like a lot of people feel was a little bit rushed. And I think that I agree for the most part. Like I think that all the beats were there for sure. I just wish that it had taken a little bit more of a journey to get to some of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Pointing to this guy here, right? Like we see his fight scene, but I wish we would have gotten more of this. Knowing that he finally developed his own form of breathing that he can do, and then also that like Gramps killed himself because he was like, oh man, I had a student who is now a demon, like this is my fault, accepting that Zenitsu being his last student and feeling like a failure. I thought we could have gotten so much more. I was really hoping that he would get, because of course, when I was like, oh, Zenitsu's such a cool character, I want to learn more about the breathings. So I read on about the breathings, and then, well, I found out about this arc. But I was like, oh man, at least I'll know. Like he gets his own shot, and his own shot was like only a couple chapters. So I definitely understand that, like having missed on that fleshed out. Because I also loved the demon he was fighting against, who was still using breathing styles. I thought that was just and he was like one after the other. Like he knew all of the other ones. It was blessed.
Yeah, that scene, I think there's a few fight scenes that I feel like could go on a little bit longer, be fleshed out a little bit more. I don't think all of them have to be, because like when you think about the Infinity Castle arc, it is a lot of fight scenes happening at once, and I don't think all of them need like more scenes or something, but Zenitsu is definitely one of them, because that scene is so important to his character development. That is like the grand finale, because not only are we seeing that he has developed his own form, the seventh form, we're seeing that this demon that he's fighting can do all the forms but number one. So they're like not evenly matched, but they're matched up kind of because of that. But also, Zenitsu opened his eyes and was awake the entire time, which was just the first time I read it, I almost missed that because it just seemed so right with like where his character was going. And then I was like, wait, that was the first time he fought awake. Wow, that was so cool. So I feel like that scene definitely we could get a lot more because it's so important to his character, and he's one of the ones that survived to the end. Another scene, and we can go back to Zenitsu if you want, but was I think. And it's funny because I'm going to talk about Tanjiro now. I'm so predictable, but I I want a lot more to happen when Tanjiro like turns into a demon. I think that was such an interesting take on the story. I really didn't see that coming. I predicted that he would die. I was talking to a friend long before I read the manga, and I was scared of it happening, but I was like coming to the realization that it could, and I thought that maybe the story might end with like him turning Nezuko into a human, and then him seeing her and like dying from battle wounds or whatever. I was like feeling like that might have been how the story was going to end, and I'm obviously glad that that didn't happen because um but I did not expect them to go the route of turning him into a demon at the end there. And I think that that could have been fleshed out a lot more. I think it obviously like he couldn't stay demon for super long because then he would have just killed them all because of his power. However, we do see briefly that he was fighting it. Giyu mentions like, "Are you fighting it, Tanjiro?" Because like he bit Nezuko, but he wasn't, eating her. So Giyu was like, "Are you fighting it?" And I feel like we could have delved a little bit more into his ability to fight it as well, because obviously he was very feral and not in control. But was he going to be kind of like turning into a Nezuko thing where it's like he still had, the side to him that didn't need to eat humans? Like we didn't get to see like anything from that. And it made it feel like it was important, but not like super detrimental to the story. It's like, okay, he turned into a demon and then he turned back into a human. Okay.
Right.
Like there was a lot of great things that happened, but I think it could be fleshed out a little bit more.
I think that's my only complaint about the series in general. Is like I said, I think all the beats are there. Like I think it knows where it's going. I just wish that particularly towards the end that there had just been a little bit more time spent on each one, like getting between the different beats, I think. But I'm hopeful that that's something that can be remedied with the anime. And I think that they've done a really nice job already with like, not that there's a ton of opportunity, I think, in the earlier stages, but when there was, I think that they took it.
Mm-hmm.
Like take that time. And why wouldn't they want to? Because they're making so much money. So I'm hopeful.
Also, like I said in our season 3 discussion, the author themselves has said that they're not super happy with the ending. They were rushed. They had crazy deadlines. So I'm hoping if they are super involved in the anime, that means they might be able to make those changes and add things where they want to make it feel a little bit more fleshed out.
Yeah.
With the fleshing out, why my reasoning for the why on why I want Zenitsu's storyline fleshed out a little bit more is like I have the emotional attachment to it because I do feel very connected to him as like a very anxious human being. And so like the moment in which he realizes you know, I've done my own way, and he's like, oh, you like got the upper hand. No, I forged my own path.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an answer that really steps above whatever that demon could have thrown at him at that point. And I think that was really cool about the entire Infinity Castle arc is that when those demons lost, we all like reading it, you felt that they lost. And like even though they could have maybe fought on at those points, they felt the emotional loss of like, oh, they've won. Like, and it was really a penultimate time for good finally triumphing over evil.
Mm-hmm.
Poor boy Akaza, right? He could have kept going, but like once he got his head cut off, he was like, no, like that's like the thing for demons. That's when they lose. So and he was like, is this what I wanted? All of them asked that.
Mm-hmm.
Man, corrupted souls.
It's good that you mentioned Akaza because I feel like we need to talk about that fight.
Bruh, oh my god. That was so much. Emily,
I
I'm
think
sure you have a lot of feelings about it.
Oh, I have feelings. I don't know. My stream of consciousness is going all over the place, guys. I'm sorry. I'm like jumping in between.
Go for it. Take your
I'm
stream
just
of
like
consciousness with us. We'll just keep
my
flowing.
my character that I would have liked to see fleshed out a little bit more is also Tanjiro, but for a slightly different reason. Um, I really wanted to see him get a little bit more awareness of like the Yorichi thing. Um, what a cool relationship that we get to see develop between like Yorichi and Kokushibo and like the twin brother relationship there, the progenitor of like the Demon Slayer mark. There's a lot of history and background, and like clearly Tanjiro is supposed to kind of be like this reincarnation or like you know some kind of version of like this same character. Or like at least have some of the qualities of the same character. And I just don't feel like he ever really like knew about it well enough, but like Muzan did. And I really would have liked to have seen him gain a little bit more awareness about that and like the sun breathing style and just get to see him come into it a little bit more than just Muzan like perceiving it that way, if it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of our interactions with Yorichi was through like Tanjiro's dreams. You know, we got a like kind of the introduction to him after the end of the entertainment district, right at the beginning of Swordsmith Village when Tanjiro was in a coma. And then again when he was like basically dead on the battlefield the first time. um, but other than that, like most of the Yorichi development we got was either with Muzan or with Kokushibo. And I agree. I feel like we could have gotten more like parallels between Tanjiro and Yorichi. I feel like there was a lot of storytelling that was missed in that. Um, and I would love to see a prequel about Yorichi in general and just like
Oh yeah.
how that all came to be. Uh, because he was hinted at from the very beginning. We see a flash of him in one of the episodes we literally just discussed in season 1. But I feel like the whole Yorichi buildup didn't like surprise me the way I had hoped, I guess. So I feel like they could definitely flesh that out a bit more as well.
I mean, I think I was maybe that is a good way to put it. I'm like, was I surprised by it? I think I was excited for it, and I feel like I was let down a little bit with it. Not because he's not like a badass in his own right, and like the relationship is really compelling, but again, it's because like Tanjiro is supposed to be this character that embodies all of this, and I don't think he really knows or understands. And then we kind of find out that like technically, I don't think they're even truly related in the first place anyway. It was just like a family friend kind of situation, and that's not what I was hoping for. I don't know if that makes it makes it feel a little bit more disjointed to me, I guess.
Tanjiro is a little bit like Moana, doesn't know who she is at that point. Like, no, seriously, like, it's very interesting to see kind of how, like, Tanjiro progresses through this as a symbol of fear for all the demons he comes across. And, you know, this hive mind that is Muzan's following. And now he doesn't even know it. He's completely blind to his own, you know, presence. And I think that's, I guess maybe it was a choice decision, because I think Tanjiro, even if he had been cognizant of like his similarities to Yoriichi as like a symbol of power, I don't think he would have even flaunted it. I don't think it would have changed his mindset any. I think maybe that's part of it too, is that Tanjiro would have said, if anything, it would have just more solidified his resolve in the sense of, this is my true destiny. And maybe that was it, but nonetheless, I still think Tanjiro kind of definitely deserved a little bit more backstory in that context, right? Because if he's at least supposed to be this somewhat symbol of power, or, you know, kind of like an All Might Deku situation, like, at least there could have been, you know, maybe a spiritual dream where he says Tanjiro Hinokami 14 or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like some kind of awareness. That's something that I was really, really wanting to see, and I feel like I just didn't really get it.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of scenes where they can definitely flesh it out more in the anime that I'm really hoping for. I think we should. I think this is kind of turning into a what we want. I think we should talk a little bit about what we've loved, because I know I'm speaking for myself when I say this, but I really did enjoy the manga. I think, you know, we're talking a lot about what could have been and what we hope will change, but I think it might be good to spend some time to talk about what we really enjoyed. And I really want to touch on the fight between Akaza, Tanjiro, and Giyu, because I think that actually was my favorite fight. I think there was so many emotions behind it. Obviously, like with Tanjiro wanting to take Akaza down after experiencing what Akaza did to Rengoku. I also absolutely adore Giyu and Tanjiro's relationship in the manga. I cannot wait to see that animated, because it's very like big brother, little brother. Tanjiro never had a big brother, and Giyu kind of becomes that person for him, and I absolutely adore that. I also like that the scene calls to a lot of the shonen animes where they're like shouting something when they're coming from behind. Avatar: Last Airbender makes a joke of it too, with Sokka being sneak attack, and then Aang getting him with the rocks to make fun of like sneak attacking from behind but shouting it. And Tanjiro shouts Akaza's name when Akaza doesn't know he's there, and it ends up actually like being something where Giyu's like, "You stupid idiot! Like, don't call his name. He doesn't know you're there." And Tanjiro could have killed him in that moment. But that was probably my favorite action scene within the manga, and I don't think that scene needed a whole lot more. We got great development for all three characters in that scene, and I think that it's going to definitely take a bit of a spotlight in when it's animated.
Like,
there
I
are
don't
a
know
lot
what
of good
was my
moments.
favorite. There's a lot of good moments. I think Tanjiro getting turned into the demon, I was not expecting it. We talked about that briefly already, but I was not expecting that twist ending, and it was for me one of the first moments where I genuinely didn't know what was going to happen, and it was really exciting for me to like turn the page and be reading that. And even though I know we were touching on things that I wish would have changed, part of the reason that I do wish that there was a little bit more is because I loved the stuff with Yorichi as well. I'm like, oh, this is like, I don't know exactly what's going on. I'm getting like little snips here and there, and I love the way that those were incorporated. All of those, and then Tanjiro getting turned to the demon were like things that I could not have foreseen and that I loved, that like kept me rapidly reading through all the pages.
For me, I know I said Doma is my favorite, but I have to give a shout out for Kokushibo. His fight scene, first off, Hana drove me home from work the other day, so we kind of had this conversation in her Honda Civic the other day. But
wow, call me out, my Honda Civic.
I don't know. You just always talk about your Honda Civic. See your local weeboos in their Honda Civics with their waifus on their car.
Oops.
Are we wrong though? All three of us, right? I have Yumiko on the back of my car. Nonetheless, I'm getting off topic. Right, Kokushibu's fight scene. So I first off love that we got to see him moon breathing, because like who doesn't love that? Also, again, would love to see, when the villain is like bad, but then they get worse. Like I remember we were at Phoenix Fan Fusion. I almost said Comic Con. Phoenix Fan Fusion, if you will. And I was like looking at a sword because there were a bunch of Demon Slayer swords. And I was like, what is that? It was like a scythe. And Hannah was like, I don't know what that is. That's weird. That's
like, you'll find out.
And I finally got to see that. Like, that scene was so wild. First off, him having like 27 forms or whatever it was. And then also, he was just going off. His sword was regenerating because it was like a part of him. Like, what? And for Kokushibo, I guess his story is very difficult because his loss wasn't in that fight. His loss was against Yorichi when he died standing in front of him. Like, Yorichi was ready to go, and his just old age lapsed on him. And I think that's just so sad because he lived on continuing to search for that purpose until the moment when he realized that his purpose had been long gone, right? And Muichiro getting stuck to a wall, and Himejima being downed, Sanemi being like, ah, man, there's no way. Genya dying in that moment. Like, everyone. That one was just so much. And even Himejima, who is like powerhouse, literally was struggling. It was so sad. Everyone was getting wrecked.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was, other than the fight with Muzan, that was where we lost the most characters, because we lost Genya and Moichiro in that scene. And I think Genya's death was the hardest for me with Sanemi's reaction. That one was bad. I'm gonna need a whole box of tissues when that. And I'm not someone who even loves Sanemi. Like he's always been low on my list for like favorite Hashiras. But that scene, that whole fight, Kokushibo's my favorite demon, because of his power. Just like he just kept on doing more and more forms. Like it was insane. We learned that Moichiro is actually a descendant of their family. He's not a direct descendant because their family line ended with Yorichi and Kokushibo, because Yorichi had a wife, she was pregnant, and sadly they were killed by demons. And so he passed on the sun breathing to the Kamado family, and that's how it got to Tanjiro. But it was done in like a dance, because the Kamado family they were coal sellers, and they were like, well, we can't do breathing for him, so it was passed down as a dance. And we get into that later. But again, that scene had a lot of story development and a lot of loss. But Kokushibo was so freaking cool. Like, I can't deny how cool he was. Upper Moon won. I mean, there's only one demon stronger than him, and that was Muzan.
A lot of people go out really strong in this story.
If you could save one character, who would it be?
We already know my answer. It's Rengoku. My boy deserved better.
Who am I saving?
We lose a lot, so it's hard.
It is hard.
I think I'm gonna say if I could have saved anyone, I'm gonna call Mitsuri. And I think that she was I think she falls like kind of you talked about earlier, how Mitsuri is like a female version of Tanjiro. I feel like she has like that, but also a little bit of Rengoku in the same class. Like very forward, very heart, very positive, but also like willing to be emotionally vulnerable and willing to be like there for other people and use her emotional fuel as what's going to push her forward in a fight. So I think Mitsuri, because really they even though Mitsuri and Obanai, like Obanai by himself, Mitsuri and Obanai, great, because the contrast that they create is funnier sometimes than him himself. Speaking of the two of them in the Infinity arc, not gonna lie, I thought that the little pieces of comedic relief of Mitsuri falling outdoors left and right was what we needed in the middle of all of that, because she just kept running and yeeting herself outdoors. And I was like, can you get it together, please? Like, we are literally
Queen.
fighting number 5. Like, come on now.
Yeah, I think one thing the show does very good is in the midst of so much action and pain, like we get those little comedic relief moments that are great. Like it's not like they don't feel out of place. And Mitsuri is just the type of character. She's like the Sasha to Attack on Titan, just like gives us that comedy in the midst of tragedy. Yeah, I would love to save Mitsuri, but I would have to save Obanai at the same time because I cannot do the whole trope of forbidden love where like one person dies and the other lives on without them. Like if they died together, I still don't like it, but at least they died together. So I can't do the saving Mitsuri because then I feel bad for Obanai for having to live without her. But I would have to save Genya. Those brothers deserve better. They had such a harsh relationship, and when like they were finally ready to forgive each other, Genya was gone, and Sanemi had to live out his years without him. And I think that just broke my heart the most. And if I could have those two make it together, I think that would have made the ending a lot happier. Honestly, it would have felt a lot better because it was such a bittersweet ending. We had Tanjiro and Nezuko made it, Inosuke and Zenitsu made it, Giyu and Sanemi made it, but they all lost so much. And that's the price of war and that's the price of battle, but we could have saved a few people.
You went from Genya to Ganya.
Oh.
People gonna hate me for me.
Oh my gosh. All right, well, I still have so many more thoughts, but I know we're running out of time. I think the last thing I wanted to touch on was just my hope of them changing the timeline a little bit. And I don't think this is gonna happen. This is kind of just like my wish list of something. And this is Hana who wants all the angst in the world and doesn't want it at the same time. But when before Tanjiro turns into a demon, but after the end of the battle, when like he's pretty much he's pronounced dead because he's not breathing, his heart's not beating. Giyu's reaction to that, first of all, I'm not ready for that to be animated at all. Giyu, who's usually so stoic and just very like he's a Levi of Attack on Titan, just doesn't show a ton of emotions. Feels like it's his fault, but my one wish, and like I said, I don't think it's gonna happen. I want Nezuko to get there before he turns into a demon. I want all the angst in the world. I want her to briefly think that he's never gonna see her be a human to make my life harder. But I'm okay with that not happening. It's all because I saw fan art, and I know I sent it to both of you. if we post this video, I'll insert it here. That fan art broke my heart, and I realized I wanted that in the anime. Do you guys have any other thoughts?
Inosuke, when he said, "I can't help you," that was so sad because he was like, Tanjiro, Tamayo. He was like just calling him the wrong name half the time, like messing with him, like because he always knew that he could at least try and wrangle Tanjiro in, or at least like beast breed his way out of it. But there was no way out of this one.
He called him by his name and pretty much came to he was willing to die at his best friend's hands because he couldn't do it.
It's rough. Anything else? You got one?
Emily?
One moment we didn't talk about that's like much earlier, but really is the catalyst for the true beginning of the end is Ubuya Shiki's like boss moment. like his death, he's like, I'm gonna make this mean something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Blue
then
moves on up.
Lit it up. So I'm excited to see that get animated too. I could see that being a good ending of a season. I'm not sure which one, but
yeah,
not sure. But anyway, we can talk about that more later.
Can you imagine though the end of season 4 being Muzan pronouncing Tanjiro dead that first time right after they started fighting him? I swear if that happens too. I can see that happening. I don't know if they're gonna go the cliffhanger route for these final seasons that we're gonna get, but they could. But still have a lot more thoughts. We are running out of time, so we're gonna end it here. But we'll probably talk about it more as we go through the show. So thank you everyone for joining us. I know this was a roller coaster of a conversation, but that's the manga for you. If you liked this or didn't like it because of the conversation, whatever, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, like our content, follow us on all of our social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter as Hashira Half Hour. We will be back to our regularly scheduled programming of recapping episodes soon. We just wanted to get this out of the way. But thanks for listening in. Have a great day. Umai.
Umai.
Umai.